Alright everyone, it's time for Occult Literature, video number 417, God-Man, the Word Made Flesh. This is 210 pages, so this is a full-length work. Link in the description to my edition of this work on Amazon. It'll also be pinned at the top on YouTube. Overall, very fun work. It's a theosophical work, and so it sort of combines elements of Christianity. It quotes from the Bible multiple times, with elements of Blavatsky's strictly theosophical teaching, and overlaps it with some Hinduism, actually. It's funny because in the Blavatsky era, Theosophy is it leans Hindu in many ways. Now, later on, Buddhism sort of takes more preference, and then slowly Christianity subverts that, and so you get these sort of multiple schismatic angles within Theosophy, and that was sort of the point, was the search for truth. That is the highest religion, and so these intercompeting sort of sub-philosophies exist. It's a fascinating school of literature. I've edited dozens of works on the topic of Theosophy, many of them by Theosophists themselves. The pair that made this work, they were Theosophists and Occultists. And basically, it proposes that in order to sort of raise your vibration as the age of Aquarius approaches, you need to do several things. You eat a healthy diet, abstain completely from alcohol because it destroys the mineral salts from which the fluids of the body are produced, and also abstain from sex. Now, this particular book is mostly, therefore, about sacred sexuality. And if you look at the backdrop of the author, the main author, Carey, he was interested in biology and chemistry and so forth. And so a large portion of this work talks about the allegorical nature of the Bible specifically, and certain Hindu tenets, and Kundalini is spoken of several times, and how they overlap with what they conceived of as the functions of the human body. And the most important part was to abstain from sex. It never explains whether that means outside of marriage only, or whether it also indicates in the conjugal sense within marriage. It never really fully fleshes that concept out. Carey never actually weighs in. Just refers to sexual function effectively lowering the capabilities of the body, and therefore of the mind, and therefore of spiritual progression. The idea is, I guess, if you're sleeping around a bunch, you're going to have a tough time. Again, it's not clear whether you're allowed to do that when you're married, like to have kids or something like that. So you could call this an extinctionist work, technically speaking, if you were to take it explicitly. Without that particular aside, it appears to indicate that all sexuality is wrong. That is literally orgasming. Why this affects women the same as men for this spiritual purpose remains to be seen, but the female side was generally not spoken of in general back then, back in the early 20th century. By the way, I think Carey died only a few years after this book was written. So yeah. One of their more interesting works, Carey did write a bunch of other literature throughout his life, and I've got to dig up some of those works at some point and read them, and possibly make some editions of them as well. Definitely theosophical. It gets a little bit weird at times. There are some inclusions here that are, I don't know, it's just eclectic and strange the way in which it's written, if that makes any sense. You can skim through the first few pages and maybe you'll see what I mean. It's almost like a religious revelational literature at times. But then it also oscillates back and forth between that and very dry scientific stuff, while proposing a bunch of theories, many of which have been effectively debunked, some of which actually hold true today, and almost are very forward-thinking. So you'll have to go through it to see. I enjoyed reading it as I was editing it. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes works are like, well, it's an interesting work, I guess, and it's something that I want to edit, but I'm not as enthused by it or as entertained by it. This is an exception. This is one of the works that I personally enjoyed. Like, I'll actually read it again, maybe even buy one of my own edited copies to have on hand to read. So again, 210 pages, full-length work, theosophical in nature. A lot of sacred sexuality, if you're into that. A lot of biblical allegorical references, too, sort of like Da Vinci Code stuff. Link in the description, link pinned at the top on YouTube. Hope you enjoy it. That's about all. Peace out.